We are talking about Purim, obviously, and about Esther. We mentioned last time why the Megillah is named after Esther alone, not Mordechai and Esther, not Yehudi. I mean, it could have had any kind of title, but it's called the Megillah of Esther. The Kabbalistic reason is because the word Esther is very closely related to the word Hester, which means concealment. God is hidden. Kel mistater. God is a hidden God in many instances and in many ways. And Esther represents the awareness of the hidden God. Or in different words, the revealing of what is hidden. So God's name does not appear in the Megillah because God is hidden. But if we were to understand this properly, just logically, what does it mean God is hidden? How can God be hidden? Hiding behind what? Like what mechitza is big enough for God to hide behind? So what does it mean he hides? And then we're told, even while he's hidden, he is really everywhere. So if he's everywhere, why is he hidden? So one of the ways of in the code language of Kabbalah, God's name is hidden. He is everywhere. In other words, there are times when God's reputation is good. The world knows him, speaks of him, and so on. And then there are times when God's reputation is not so good. He is neglected by the world, by people. And so his name is hidden, his fame, his name, his reputation. So only God's reputation, only God's expression can be withheld. God can either express himself or not, show himself or not, but he's always present because he can't, there's no place for him to escape. He can't get away. So Esther means a time when God's name is not revealed. And so God's name does not appear in the Megillah. His name is concealed. So what happens? You can either give up. If you don't know God's name and God's name is concealed and hidden, you can become discouraged, give up. Or the fact that his name is concealed pushes you to look deeper. If I can't find your name, then I got to find out who you really are. Because the name doesn't tell me everything. So that's what happened on Purim. When God's name was concealed, we went looking deeper. And we found God himself. It sounds a little bit like Hanukkah. What happened on Hanukkah is that all the oil was contaminated. The Jews had a choice to make. Use the contaminated oil, do the best you can with what you have. It's second best, but it works. It's acceptable. There's no sin in using contaminated oil when everybody is experienced war and death. So the oil doesn't have to be more holy than you are. So you could use contaminated oil. Or you can go searching, look deeper until you find oil that was not contaminated. The greatness and the miracle of Hanukkah was that the Jews chose the second option. They went looking and they found, because you will always find if you look. So we can compare the two stories. Here, the name of God is hidden. You have to go looking deeper. And there, the uncontaminated oil was missing. You had to go looking deeper. The difference is this. On Purim, we went looking for God because his name was missing. On Hanukkah, we went looking for the deeper part of our soul because that's what was missing. We felt contaminated. And we had to find that oil within us that was not contaminated. So on Purim, we discover the reality of God. Hanukkah, we discover the reality of us. That may explain why it's celebrated so differently. The celebration of Hanukkah, although we do have lot, the celebration of Hanukkah is primarily candle lighting, the menorah. 8 days, an additional candle every night. That's kind of spiritual, or not so physical. The flame, a candle, it's symbolic of the soul and so on, kind of spiritual. Purim we celebrate in a very physical way, by eating, by drinking, by sharing food. So although there is the reading of the Megillah, which is not a physical mitzvah, but that's just so that we know what we're doing, telling the story of Purim. But the celebration is through eating. There's no candle lighting. There's no spiritual stuff going on. It's celebration of the body, because what God's interest is in his world is obviously the physical. Why is it so obvious? How is it obvious? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Heaven is spiritual, earth is physical. Heaven is mentioned at the beginning, but the rest of the 5 books and the prophets is all about earth. Because God doesn't need help with the spiritual. What he needs help with is the physical. That a physical human being with physical limitations and so on should reach beyond himself and connect with God, bringing God into the physical reality in a way that they become one. They merge like a soul and a body. So just like the soul fills the body and gives it life, God fills the world and gives it life, if the body is responsive. If the body is paralyzed or the body is numb, then that connection is blocked. So our job is to make and that's what every mitzvah. A mitzvah means taking a physical object and turning it into a godly object, because it's being used for its godly potential. So everything in this world can serve God. And that's why God created it. Human beings carry the responsibility to serve God. Everything else, the mineral, the vegetable, and the animal, can serve God if the human being uses the world as it should be. So the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, if you give 10% or 20% of your income to charity, all your money becomes holy. The 20% is representative. So all the effort you put into making a living, into making the money, every day, every decision, every travel to the office, from the office to the customer, everything you do to make the money that you make, when you give 10% of it away, then all of it becomes part of the service of God. The money becomes godly, the travel is godly, what you do on the way in traveling, where you stay, where you eat, it's all godly because it's all elevated by the 10% that you're giving to tzedakah. The same is true with all material substances. You use flour and water to make a matzah, all the flour in the world, all the wheat in the world, all becomes elevated. Has actualized its godly potential. So Esther represents the Jew in a time of concealment. First of all, she was taken to the palace against her will, away from her home, out of her element, to a place where she does not belong and will never belong. So she is in a concealed circumstance. Her true self is not revealed. Mordechai tells her not to even tell Achashverosh that she is Jewish. Another concealment. God's name doesn't appear in the Megillah. Another concealment. The miracle happens in a natural fashion so that if we're not told that there was a miracle, we would never even notice. Achashverosh was in a bad mood, so he told Haman that he can do whatever he wants to harm Jews. Achashverosh was in a good mood, he changes his mind. What's the miracle? It just seems that whoever catches his ear carries the day. When Haman was his favorite, he did whatever Haman wanted. Esther is his favorite, he does whatever Esther wants. He's a fickle king. And everybody knew it also, by the way. The name Achashverosh, in case you haven't heard, is a nickname. It's a name that they used to refer to him behind his back, because Achashverosh means a pain in the head. He gave everybody headaches because he kept flip-flopping on every issue. So where is the miracle? Esther was his favorite. She came to him and said, please, don't let him kill my people. He said, of course not. Where's the miracle? So everything is concealed. Everything is covered up. Everything is hidden. And when the Jews at that time saw past the concealment, they looked a little deeper. They didn't ask God to be obvious. They accepted God as he was, with his name, without his name, revealed, not revealed. These are all details. This is all commentary. He is our God, and we rely on him, and we trust in him only, because when we try to trust in a friendly politician, we're always going to be disappointed. So, the theme of Purim is discover the invisible, look beyond appearances, and then miracles happen when you see past the invisible. You become capable of everything. When you get to the truth, nothing gets in the way. so that you can celebrate and be godly even in eating and drinking, which on other days might be a little less than godly, a little less than holy, maybe not even kosher. But Purim, even the eating is a celebration of godliness because we see past the surface. God is the reality of everything. And even when he's smiling to you, you know he's there. You know that it's all about him. And so as you eat, you are celebrating him. Usually, if you want to celebrate him, you have to dress differently, put on your Yom Tov clothes, you have to eat special foods, you have to close your business, refrain from working. But on Purim, you don't have to put on any special clothes, and you don't have to eat any special foods, and you can work on Purim, you can cook, and there are no prohibitions, and yet everything is godly. It's a godly day. We just have to bear that in mind. That may also explain why we have this custom of putting on a mask. When you put on a mask, especially when children put on masks, they're not kidding anybody. Your father knows who you are, even when you're wearing a mask. So what is the purpose of the mask? It's just to give an appearance that is strange or unusual, but not to get people to forget who you really are. So it's like a peekaboo. You cover a pleasure, a pleasant surprise. But that's the name of the game. So the concealment is only to get you to realize, to remember, there is more to God than appearances. There is more to God than miracles. There is more to God than being an ATM where you can get all your blessings. There's God himself, the creator who has a purpose, who created us to be partners with him in that purpose. That's the real thing. Here's another thought. Purim seems to be, I mean, if we were speaking in secular language, Purim is not a holy day. It's not a holiday. Holiday means holy day. It's what's holy about the day? Or in different words, celebrating Purim doesn't seem to be a religious activity. If somebody came into a shul on Rosh Hashanah, he would know that something religious is going on. If he came to a Pesach Seder, he would know something religious is going on. But if he comes into your house on Purim, how is he going to know that anything religious is going on? You're singing, you're happy, you're eating, you're sharing foods. What's religious about this? That's a significant consideration. There's nothing religious about it. Yet it's godly. There's nothing spiritual about it, because it's more than spiritual. It's godly. This tells us something about ourselves. When we do a mitzvah, like the Seder on Pesach, or the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, that does seem to be a religious activity or a spiritual activity. But Purim reminds us that it's not the case. Yom Kippur, as we spoke last week, Yom Kippur is a day like Purim. So what do we learn from Purim? enlightens us about Yom Kippur, Purim is not a religious activity. So Yom Kippur is also not. We are not being religious. And what that means in very practical terms, we've always been told that we need to improve ourselves. You need to grow. You need to improve yourself, fix yourself, work on your weaknesses and on your flaws and on your... That's like a religion. Purim tells us you don't need to change yourself. You don't need to improve yourself. You don't need to acquire talents that you don't have. What happened on Purim is Jews came to the startling realization that being a Jew is a fact. Being connected to God is not an activity or an ambition. It's a fact. The Jewish soul is a little piece of God. And maybe that's why we received a new title. All of a sudden we were Yehudi, not the children of Israel. We became actualized Jews. Not Jewish because of our ancestors, not Jewish because we are someone's children or grandchildren. I'm a Jew. The Jewishness is me, not an inheritance. So we stopped calling ourselves the children of Israel. God stopped calling us the children of Israel, and he called us Yehudim. Because we don't need to get closer to God. We don't need to become more godly. We don't need to fix all our flaws. That's commentary. That's secondary. That you do that in your spare time if you have spare time. What you're really doing is sharing the godliness you carry within you with the rest of the world. That's Purim. Purim says, don't get better, but share what you have. On the one hand, it's a huge relief. It's liberating. I don't have to think about myself. I don't have to evaluate myself. I don't have to keep taking my pulse. I don't have to keep comparing myself to others. I don't have to look in the books to see if I'm doing fine. I'm fine. I am a Yehudi. That will never change. It can't get weaker and it can't get stronger. It's godly. The mission is to share it with the rest of the world. To make the world godly, that's a project. To make myself godly, I need to fulfill my mission. So my thoughts, my devotion, my ambition should be, what can I do to bring the godliness to the rest of the world? But to make myself better means I don't know myself. I don't appreciate the Yehudi in me. And that's why we celebrate Purim without doing religious stuff, without doing anything spiritual, without focusing on ourselves, doing tshuva, improving our devotion or our frumkeit. Not about that at all. Purim means I will send you some food, enjoy. I will give the poor what they need so that they can enjoy. That's Purim. That's wonderful. It even sheds light on Yom Kippur. It illuminates everything, particularly in the world we live in today. We can't afford to become introverted. That's not what the world needs from us. And it's not what we need. It's a trap. If we get introverted, if we start thinking about ourselves, if we start taking our own pulse, how am I doing? This is worse than nothing. It makes us depressed. If we think we're doing great, it makes us arrogant. It makes us selfish, spiritual gluttony, as it's called. This is no good. We don't need this. We don't need this. But what you can do for others is awesome. Because we now know if a microaggression can devastate a person, then can't a tiny goodness save a person's life? Now that we see how interdependent we are and how deeply affected we are by little things, doesn't that make the opportunity to do something for someone else that much easier, that much greater, that much more constant? We can always be doing something that might change a life, save a life, enhance a life with little things. If a microaggression can be so painful, a micro kindness can save a life. So let's be Yehudim. You have godliness, don't be stingy with it. You have a godly soul, you can bring godliness to everyone you meet, to everything you do. Don't keep it to yourself. Be Purim all year, not just on Purim.